Welcome to TypeScript FM, the friendly podcast for TypeScript developers where we bring you news, updates, and interviews from the community with plenty of tomfoolery sprinkled in. I'm your host, Kamran Ayub, and I'm joined by my co-host and best bud, Eric Onerheim. Together, we're the two TypeScript fools. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Kamran.
How you doing?
I'm doing better than I was last night. I got some sleep and we got to daycare without incident this morning.
Good. Yeah.
I got McDonald's
Nice.
as a little treat.
Just the coffee?
So I also got a sandwich. But,
Cool.
The coffee, I don't know. Like maybe this is lowbrow or maybe this is like an incorrect opinion. I love the McDonald's coffee. It's really
funny.
good. And then I keep the cup because I've made a pot here and I just keep refilling my cup
There you go.
with my Aldi brand morning brew.
Yeah. That's cool. Aldi has some good coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Like the hazelnut's one of our favorites.
Yes. I just ran out of that. That's what I was drinking yesterday, was the hazelnut coffee.
Oh, yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Good stuff. Speaking of sleep, I had a very wild dream a couple days ago where maybe it's prophecy that Syntax FM was talking about Excalibur. And
Ooh.
I had a very vivid like image in my mind of Wes Boss talking about it.
Yep.
Like, typing on the screen, like the
Yeah.
side by side.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, that was weird. And I think it's because like that night I was falling asleep listening to Syntax. So I was really primed, I guess.
Well,
Wishful thinking, perhaps.
when Scott and Wes Boss decide to make a game and they decide that they want to build it in TypeScript,
Yeah.
that might be a possibility.
Hit us up.
Yep.
We'll help you out. I've done a lot of games. I've been solo dad this week. So I've been solo dad for about 5 days now. And we went to the zoo
Nice.
on Saturday and that girlie had a blast.
That's
She
cool.
loved the sea lions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, did not want to leave the sea lion tank.
Oh, so I have a hot tip for you. We asked my grandparents, they were like, what gift do you want this year? And we're like, Minnesota Zoo membership.
We have one.
Yeah.
Grandpa gave it to us.
Totally worth it.
It is 100% because you know what? You can just roll up.
Yep.
And you don't need to like figure out like, oh, do I need to buy tickets or whatever? You can just like roll up and
Yep.
it's like $0.
So for 2 years or so, they gave us a science museum membership, and that was also worth its weight in gold. It's usually just worth buying, as a family. But if you can get your grandparents to buy it, then, it's even better.
Yeah. It's a good Christmas gift.
Yep. Yep.
Word to the wise, other parents out there.
That's
Drop
right.
hints to the grandparents to get zoo memberships.
Memberships in general are like really valuable, I would say, because you can get a lot of mileage out of them.
Oh, yeah. And it wears the kids out. Like,
Yep.
we had that little girlie running around the zoo for like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
That's all she needed. 2 hours. Then we went home, ate some lunch,
Yep.
passed out.
For the
was great.
summer times, we've got the Minnesota State Park Pass. So you can just go roll up into a state park. Don't have to pay. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Memberships
Yeah.
are awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Minnesota has a lot of good, like, outdoor things you can do,
Yeah.
especially in the summer. And this week, the weather's going to be nice, but March is always a wild card here.
Yep. That's right. Well, I finally had to go get a new dishwasher. This
is a huge deal.
It's been on its last legs for quite a while. At first, it first started with not heating up anymore. Like the water would not heat up. Now, as you can imagine, what happens to grease when you can't heat up to clean
Nothing.
it? It doesn't do anything. So like the dishes were, quote unquote clean, but they needed some extra cleaning afterwards. I was like, okay, this is like useless. So then we started doing most things by hand. And then finally it just stopped draining, which was a pretty typical issue before. I had it fixed like 4 times because it wouldn't drain. And that can be due to a lot of different reasons. But part of the reason is that they use a plastic impeller blade at the bottom. And if anything gets stuck in there, it breaks the blade. And so I've had to get that replaced like 3-4 times. So anyway, did some research. Just the too long didn't research is just get a Bosch if you can. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a Bosch. It's so quiet, you don't know it's running.
Yeah. Okay. So I knew that, right? And I ordered that. They came with the Bosch. They looked at my counter and they're like, this is not high enough. I'm like, what are you talking about? They said, we need exactly 34 inches or more. And this is 33 and 5/8. It's not going to work. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like, no, it has to go in absolutely straight. There's no way I can get it in here. You have to pick something else. So I was like, okay, well, they recommended GE. So I got a GE profile line. And that seems to have, pretty good reviews, pretty good serviceability. The owner said that they don't get a lot of service calls for that. I think the two brands that you kind of want to avoid with dishwashers are Samsung and LG. Samsung in general, just avoid it. Don't get any appliances from Samsung.
They make better phones.
Yeah, yep. And LG, the dishwashers for LG are pretty poor.
Mm-hmm.
But I was seeing that washers and dryers from LG are pretty good. So I don't know what their deal is, that they have two different departments or what, but
I heard the same thing from our refrigerator repair person. They said, yeah, don't get any brands that start with L and end with G.
Yep. In fact, I called up my appliance repair guy because he's usually the one that fixes the dishwasher, and he's like, yep, I don't work on LG anymore. I was like, okay, well, that's a signal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
It's gone are the days when you could buy an appliance and have it last.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what's going on with us. But we should probably move on to what's going on in the world, the news for the week of February 23rd, 2026.
That's right.
So
and there's some big ones.
There is a big one. Do we want to start with the State of JS survey?
We should.
I think that the number one takeaway for all listeners here is that we made the list.
We made the list.
Yep.
We made the list.
That's the number one thing that came out of this survey was that TypeScript FM is on the list of podcasts.
That's I was blown away. Like we were looking at it last night and I'm like, no way, we're on the list.
Yeah.
It's like,
so
what?
Thank everybody who wrote in, all 17 of you. You're perfect human beings and people, and we love you. So I was talking to Eric before this, but when we started the show, one of the measurements I said was, we'll know that we have made a dent when we show up on a survey just without asking or without, really pushing for that. And we did. So that's pretty cool. Now we're only at 0.2%, but that's totally fine.
Yeah.
There's 200 or plus podcasts on the list, in total. So to even to be in the top 25, because we're number 23, I think right now, to even be in the top 25 is really good. So that's a measurement that we'll track, from now on. So state of JS 2026, we'll see, have we moved up any ranks at all? If so, then we know that we're doing a pretty good job. So let's go over some of the other highlights that everybody else is kind of interested in. So TypeScript usage. Basically, 77% on average of people who responded use TypeScript. And of that, 40% use it 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not even 90% of the time. That was also very high. That was 25%. But 40% use it 100% of the time. So people are just starting with TypeScript. It's becoming synonymous with JavaScript.
And that 40% figure is 6% higher compared to last year, which is pretty extreme growth.
Yes. So adoption is increasing, which is cool. So, bodes well for the podcast itself too.
Mm-hmm. Called it.
But I think, yeah, exactly. But I think what's interesting is looking at the tool usage and how that's driving stuff, because there still is lots of Webpack. But if you look at the sentiment, it was 37% or something have negative sentiment. I've used it and I don't like it. But if you look at Vite, it is not as high as Webpack, but it has a much greater amount of people who use it and like it. So it has much more positive sentiment, and it's growing hand over fist. So I think it's going to overtake maybe next year.
Yeah, I think one of the key, maybe the key observation I would have is Vite is very much like a turnkey. It'll just mostly work for most things that you're mostly doing.
Mm-hmm.
And Webpack is, you must configure it always.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are just over that.
Yep.
Me included.
Yes. So I think Webpack is really powerful, and I'm not using Webpack, but I was, and so now I'm using RSPack, which is also on the list, but has a much less percentage of usage. But it's a really nice kind of like migration path because I'm not on Vite yet, but migrating to RSPack gives me the sort of the Rust ecosystem, which is kind of cool. The other interesting thing is that if you just go by social media, you might think that React is sort of like dead or like not is falling way out of favor. But either most people who took the survey are React developers, or this more accurately represents the ecosystem, but React is still really, really popular and it still has pretty positive sentiment overall.
Mm-hmm.
So that was surprising to me because I thought that it might have a larger negative sentiment, but it's actually pretty minimal. What was it?
Yeah, I think the negative used it and negative was 16%.
Yep, 16%.
And then heard of it and negative 6%, which is an interesting metric. It's like maybe an optics metric. Like,
yeah, it would be like brand reputation.
Yeah, which is an odd one. And certainly on socials, you do hear a lot of React bashing.
But I think market-wise, it's still the winner here. You know what was a surprising statistic, though? We both sort of like did a double take when we saw this. But they have a list on the tools for TSC CLI. And we know that that's the TypeScript compiler, right? And with 77% of people using TypeScript, I was surprised that 26% answered they never heard of it. Never heard of the TSC CLI. Isn't that wild?
Yeah. And it's, in fact, it might be one of the biggest. Yeah, it's like one of the biggest never heard of it's on the survey.
Yeah.
Next to like SWC and testing library, which I can understand why testing library, you've never heard of it. But that's wild to me. And my thinking here is that most people just get the editor LSP experience out of the box, and they don't realize that that's being empowered by this.
And build tools.
Yeah.
So I think that it is a level of abstraction that is lower level than the stuff that people are interacting with every day.
Mm-hmm.
Because people are interacting with the build tools and the editor every day, right? But you don't usually need to drop down to TSC, the CLI, to like compile stuff, unless you're like a library author, and then you're probably more familiar with the TSC CLI. But like as an app developer, you probably aren't because you don't have to deal with it. So anyway, that was one of our surprising statistics. For runtimes, as you can guess, Node.js, 90%. 90% of respondents are using Node.js. Browser comes right underneath that at 87%. And then all the way in third place, so Node.js is number one, browser is number two at 87. The next highest one is Bun at 22%. Mm-hmm. That's like, what is that? 60% like difference in market share or mind share in usage, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and this is before the whole like Anthropic buzz. Like this survey was at the end of 2025.
True. Yep.
Another interesting thing on this list is how much Cloudflare workers have grown in the last year.
Yeah.
Which is an incredible amount of growth.
Yep. And I think that's probably just going to increase, especially now that they also purchased Astro, which is also on the meta frameworks as one of the most liked meta frameworks. And Next.js is still the like market leader, or at least adoption right now, but it does have quite a bit of negative sentiment. So we'll see if that increases for next year, and if the share of adoption switches over to different things. So I would predict that Cloudflare workers would increase next year.
Yeah. I think Cloudflare is poised to become a major player here with the acquisition of Astro, and with all of the enhancements to Cloudflare workers and all of the tooling investments there from like, especially from like Vite and the environment API and others.
I think Astro is poised to become a Next.js killer. Like they could do it. Mm-hmm. I think if I was going to create a greenfield project and I needed to use a JavaScript meta framework, like let's say that I had no choice, I had to pick a meta framework, I would choose Astro because it has so much flexibility and its architecture is so flexible with like how you can adopt it as a team. Like if you need to use multiple technologies, you can. Or if you need to if you're migrating from something to something, it's a great fit for that. And it supports everything. Like it has SSR and it has client-side island interactivity and everything like that.
Yeah, you're not hamstrung by
Yep.
a particular front-end framework.
Right. Exactly. Okay, so the conclusion of the entire survey, Daniel Rowe, who's the creator of Nuxt, he wrote up the conclusion, and the headline is TypeScript has won.
Yep, I agree. TypeScript has won.
Mic drop.
The battle is over. TypeScript won.
That's right. So I just wanted to read a little bit of what Daniel wrote. He said, TypeScript has won, not as a bundler, but as a language. Dino and Bun have supported it for a long time, and now type stripping means you can write it natively in stable Node.js versions. If types as comments make it, you'll even be able to write it in the browser. And the day of Vite has come. This year, we saw Vite downloads surpass Webpacks, and alongside it, vtest usage has surged upwards. It seems like a good time to opt into the new Vite toolchain, and 2026 promises to be the year that happens, with the stable release of Rolldown to power a new, faster Vite, as well as the promise of an all-in-one Vite Plus. So yeah, that's pretty much how we've been reading the landscape too. When we look at it, Vite is definitely the upcoming up-and-comer.
Yeah, I mean, we've switched most of our repos over to that, and even the latest version of Angular, they moved from Webpack to Vite as their build system, and vtest as their build system from Karma.
Yep. And I mean, people want tools that work together. So if you're going to create a unified toolchain, that's a really big selling point.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to a new release of Dino. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, Dino 2.7 just dropped, and this has some neat features. I think, like, kind of the headliner across the landscape is Temporal API is now bouncing through all of the runtimes now that it's been merged into Chrome proper and turned on. So the Temporal API is stabilized, which is awesome, especially for like server-side stuff. This is a thing that you're going to want to reach for if you're doing any kind of date manipulation or time manipulation.
Mm-hmm.
The unstable temporal flag is no longer required. Dino now follows suit as part of the V8 upgrade.
That's right.
And Matt has a blog post here that we'll link in the show notes talking about how temporal kind of changes the game for you and when you're doing dates and some of the pitfalls of dates if you weren't aware of the JavaScript date and its sorted past.
Mm-hmm. We did preview that Dino was going to be releasing Windows ARM support. So this would be like Qualcomm Snapdragon processors, which are not Intel x86. So before, you'd have to have x86 emulation, right, on those machines. But now Dino has shipped with Windows ARM 64-bit support. So it's native speed now.
And this is like, one, a perf thing, two, a power thing.
Yep.
If you're working on Windows with ARM.
Yeah. Yes. The other cool thing is they have full support for package JSON, of course, but they added a new feature called override packages, which allows you to specify packages anywhere in the dependency tree that you want to override. So it's great for transitive dependencies that have security vulnerabilities, or if you just want to replace the dependency outright, you can use the package overrides feature to do that, which is pretty cool.
I've used this to hack around deprecated dependencies, transitive dependencies. So this is also useful in that situation.
Yeah. So we'll link to the blog post. There's a lot more like quality of life stuff in there that's pretty cool, including like the Dino compile self-extracting, which is pretty neat. It extracts the bundle to the file system, so it doesn't have to use a virtual file system. So there's a bunch of cool stuff like that you can read about.
And I think the last thing I'll add is this release also adds more Node.js compatibility.
Of course.
That it's going to be a race to the bottom there. I think it's table stakes to be Node.js compatible. So I don't think that's going to be a differentiator across the runtimes. I think it's just going to be expected.
Yes, I agree. Okay. Speaking of Node, there are new LTS and Edge releases. So Edge release would be Node 25.7. I think the big notable change here is that SQLite is now marked as a release candidate, which is pretty cool. So did you all know that Node has a SQLite module? Because not a lot of people know that.
Yeah. And also, did you know you can get a lot done with SQLite? Like you can get a lot, you can maybe more than you should, but you can get a lot done with SQLite.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of SQLite's really nice. It's a workhorse for sure. And then for the LTS release, that would be 24.14. Remember that in TS 6.0 beta, they allow subpath imports that start with #/ and we covered that in our TS 6.0 beta video. So that has been released as part of the LTS. So in 24, now you can use that. And now that's also compatible with TS6. So that's pretty cool. And then the other interesting notable change that I noticed was that Joey Chung added http.setGlobalProxy from env. And basically, this is like a one-stop API call to just set up the global proxy from whatever is available. So that I don't have to configure the proxy for each thing. So this sets it up for fetch and request and all that kind of stuff. And it sets it up from like the HTTP proxy environment variable and things like that for you automatically.
This was a huge pain point for those in like corporate environments where you might have an outbound proxy for any software that you're running as like a security measure. Kind of a pain in the butt.
Yep. But that's cool. So those are the 24 and 25 releases. Obviously, there's more to that. There's more in there, but you can read more. But I wanted to move on quick to Node 27, which you're like, hold on a second. We went from 24 and 25, and why are we jumping now to 27? And so it's because they're changing up the release schedule.
Yes.
So this is really important and something that is they released a draft post, and it's a sneak peek at the new release schedule starting with Node 27. So what's going to happen? As of October 2026, so this is later this year, okay? There's only going to be one major release per year in April, and that will have an LTS promotion in October. That means that every release becomes an LTS, so there's no more odd-even distinction. Node.js 27 will become LTS, and the version numbers are going to align with the year of the first current release and transition to LTS. So 27 in 2027, 28 in 2028, and so on. So this is going to be awesome. They are still going to have an edge release, an alpha channel for early testing. So this would be like the equivalent of like right now Node 25 would be on the alpha channel. Node 24 is the LTS. There's not going to be that confusion anymore. So we don't have to say, hey, remember right now Node 24 is the LTS and 25 is the alpha, right? So now we can just say it's Node 27. That's what's out. And it's just aligned to the current calendar year, which is really nice.
I'm kind of into like, especially when a project gets pretty mature and you're not really thrashing in like API that much. You're just fixing and adding small lowercase a new features.
Yeah.
Calver makes a lot of sense. Calendar versioning. In fact, I think Safari switched to this as well. So like the latest version of Safari is 26 for the year 2026.
Yep. Well, I think, and that aligns with the iOS versions too, I noticed. So they must be switching fully over to calendar versioning. So that's basically what the blog post is about. And then they explain sort of why this is happening. And just like you said, this is like the release schedule is 10 years old. So, and it came about after the merger with io.js. And so there was a lot of growth in that time, right? And so there's a lot of churn, and the technical steering committee was still being formed and all that kind of good stuff. But now Node.js is pretty mature, and they've got a really nice cadence going. And so this is going to reduce the burden on the release management team quite a bit. And it's also just going to, like, the mental overhead of figuring out what version you need and what version you're on is just going to be a lot simpler.
Yeah. This is going to be like maybe a mind shift for those corporate policymakers.
Yep.
That only like even numbers. They're going to have to readjust their brains.
Yes. But it is going to make their lives easier too, because they can be more planful. They're going to know that every April there's going to be a new release. And then in October, they're going to know that there's going to be a new LTS promotion. So yeah, I think that'll be great.
I think this will also be good for getting new features faster, because if you are in a super risk-averse environment that only wants LTSs, you only get new features every 2 years.
That's right.
In the current scheme. And then this will speed up.
Yep. And that's one of the things they talk about in the blog post, is that when they researched and they asked their users, what they found is that most companies will just only adopt the LTS. Like nobody is adopting the Edge version in production unless you're like, a startup or something like that. But enterprises are definitely more risk averse when it comes to versioning like that. Okay. Cool. We still have some more runtime news. So we've covered Dino, we've covered node releases. Guess what? There's also a new Bun release. And normally we don't cover every single Bun minor release because their versioning is pretty wonky. But to me, this is a major release. So there's a couple new cool things. They've got a new native REPL. So if you've used the Bun REPL in the past, it was like a simulated REPL. And now that has been completely rewritten in Zig. So it's a native speed and we'll have native performance and all that good stuff. So that's pretty cool. Now, the other interesting thing is that Bun's transpiler now fully supports TC39 Stage 3 standard ECMAScript decorators. And apparently, this is one of the most requested features since 2023 for Bun. So now Bun fans can rejoice. They've got their Stage 3 decorators.
Love this.
Yeah.
I am maybe a little too excited about decorators. I'm a huge decorator person. I love them.
Yep.
Maybe too much.
Yep. And we've already covered this, but just as a reminder, this is not the same as TypeScript experimental decorators, which are the legacy decorators that Microsoft released with TypeScript. You don't need that anymore. In modern build tools today, in today's world, you can use Stage 3 decorators natively in TypeScript, and now Bun supports them too. Okay, the other two cool things, just for performance, they've got a twice as fast event loop on macOS and Linux now, or at least on macOS. I'm not sure if it's the same 2x faster on Linux, but it's definitely 2x faster on macOS. And this is like the Bun event loop, right? That's the entire JavaScript engine runs on that event loop. So having it be twice as fast is a pretty big deal.
Yep. Now there's a big star caveat there, which is if you're blocking the event loop, then things will slow down. But it's up to you to write good code.
Yep. Yes. It's the curse of all, JavaScript programs. You have to keep that in mind. They did upgrade their underlying engine, JavaScript core. And so that upgrade comes with tons of performance improvements. Like we're talking multiple times performance improvements for different things like structured clone and other things like that. I'm not going to go into every single one of them, but there's a bunch of performance improvements. Bun gets even faster, I guess, is the too long didn't read for this one.
Also, not to be outdone by Dino, they also added Windows ARM support.
They did. I noted that too. So now
they also support Windows ARM, Snapdragon, etc.
Yep. I like how they just sort of stealthily put that in there. Yeah, we've got ARM support too. Cool. Right. So this is like an arms race, basically. If you're looking at these change logs. Okay, cool. Two other things that are kind of newsworthy here. I came across a new announcement. It's brand new as of February, which is put forth by the Google Chrome team and I think Microsoft. WebMCP. And this is an official W3C standard that is being worked on. So I put together some of my thoughts into a Blue Sky thread, but I can summarize them here. So obviously I have a course that is on MCP, okay? But it's not like, I get paid when people watch it. You don't have to buy it or anything like that. So this is not a sales pitch. I think MCP is really an interesting technology, and I think that it has a lot more use cases than what people normally think of, which is like it's for developers. But it's not just for developers. It's cool because it allows you to abstract a bunch of stuff that agents can do with your own deterministic code. So yes, agents are good at calling tools, but they're not as good of calling context-specific tools that are specific to your situation or like your product or your environment or your use case, right? But one of the major issues that we see right now is that everybody's building their own copilots inside their apps. Riverside is a great example. Riverside, and this is the one that I bring up in my Blue Sky thread. We use Riverside to do the podcast, okay? They've got something called Co-Creator, right? So all these different little AI copilot agents, they're like Copilot, Co-Creator, whatever you want to call them. They are limited in what they can do because it's whatever the engineering team decides that they can do, right? So one of the things that I've tried to do with Co-Creator, and it doesn't work, is like fix our chapter titles that it generates on new episodes because they're always wrong. And we follow a very well-known template. It should be really simple to create some instructions to like have it update our chapter titles so that they match our conventions. So this is like 10 minutes out of all my editing time is always just editing chapter titles, right? So this is the perfect thing for an AI to do because I don't want to do it. And it's very structured and it's very predictable. It should be able to statistically predict what my chapter titles are going to be. It should do a good job of that. The thing is that the co-creator can't do that, right? Even though there is an API for it, like Riverside has an API. You can add chapter titles. That's part of the API surface, right? But it's just not exposed to their co-creator. In order to do that, you have to spend some engineering time, integrate it, make sure that it works, right? Okay, so with that said, what WebMCP would allow you to do is to just expose the schema for what your API surface is that you want to expose through MCP to a browser agent or to any agent. So for example, in Chrome, you would add it through Claude, right? So Chrome would be a proxy layer to whatever website you're looking at. And if it exposes WebMCP, you could then use it from Claude, right? So I could say, hey, Claude, my Riverside account, go and update my chapter titles. And as long as they created a schema for their same API call that they already have in the backend, it would go do it. They don't have to spend extra engineering effort. They don't have to create a custom UI in their app. They don't have to integrate something totally custom into their editor experience. They could still do that. They could have both, right? But WebMCP would allow people to expose their website as an API service area. And since it's all implemented on the client side, it's just a fetch call, right? Or it's just a client-side schema. So you can write whatever JavaScript you want to implement the tool. The tool could just call an existing API if you want to do that. You could still create custom tools that are specific to the way, Riverside might do their thing or your app does your thing. It might be common workflows or stuff like that. But you're just exposing that spec out, so that contract out, so that your website just becomes an MCP tool. So anyway, I think this is pretty cool, and hopefully we'll see some adoption. I think that it's not going to click until someone has a good use case for it and can show like what it can do. And I think stuff like Riverside is in a good position to try doing something like that because they've already gone kind of all in on the AI stuff. So you might as well like implement the WebMCP spec. But think about documentation sites. You could create a generic, like if your Docusaurus or your Mitlify or your whatever documentation platform can just expose a WebMCP surface for all documentation sites. And now suddenly your DevTool documentation is now supported by anything that supports MCP. So that's pretty huge too. So I think that standards usually just create a lot easier mutual interoperability rather than people creating copilots in little sandboxes, like in walled gardens, right, inside of their apps. So this allows those agents to be able to reach into any site that supports WebMCP. So anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that. Pretty cool stuff. You found something about React Foundation.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. The React Foundation has officially launched. It is hosted by the Linux Foundation. So React, React Native, and other supporting projects like JSX are no longer owned by Meta, which makes me personally extremely happy for no reason at all.
You don't even use React.
It makes me extremely happy. I don't even use React, but I'm really happy about this.
I mean, I think it's good for governance. I do think it's a good idea.
Yes. And the founding members, there's 8 platinum founding members: Amazon, Callstack, Expo, Huawei, and Meta, Microsoft, and Software Mansion, and Vercel. So, kind of the big players that are invested in React's future.
Yeah.
So the next step here is they're figuring out the technical governance structure for React. There's a provisional leadership council right now that'll kind of steward the transition into what we're going to be expecting in the future. They're transferring repositories, websites, and other infrastructure to the React Foundation out of Meta, exploring NGA type stuff for the React ecosystem, which is good. It's good for everyone. And they're going to do React Conf.
Cool.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is neat. We've shared our thoughts on what we think about the React Foundation. I think it's good for governance for sure. It's like there's multiple stakeholders in it so that it's not just one company that is deciding the direction of React. So hopefully it works out.
Moving on to Library Watch, webpro.nl is at it again and introduces unbash, which is a fast zero-dependency parser written in TypeScript for parsing bash, which I thought was super cool. And I think it's very instructive, too, if you want to go and read and figure out, oh, how might I build one of these things? I think it's super cool. I don't know. Bash is an extremely unique language, and it looks cool. Like I was about to curse. It shoots out like just structured JSON that is the parsed expression. It's really nice. It's very cool.
Yeah, this is really neat, and it has no dependencies.
Yep, just TypeScript. So if you want to, I mean, I can imagine you could take this and run and build your own pet language.
Yeah. So someone is asking, when would you need this? Which I do think is a good question. And Lars said for linting, static analysis, security audits, and Knip. Oh, it's gonna get me every time. Knip wants to extract commands from scripts referencing binaries and packages that should be installed, and contains arguments that represent packages or entry files. You can also use it to generate docs. And this parser is not suited for formatting because it does not produce a CST.
Yep, it's cool stuff.
Yeah,
I enjoyed perusing the code.
Nice. Well, I also came across a alternative to Zod. Now, we've covered multiple alternatives to Zod. We've also covered standard schema, which is like a standardization of the base part of most validation libraries, so you can switch them out. If you are a library author or something like that wants to have a standard interface where people can just bring their own validator. But this one is called Decoders, and it reads like TypeScript. So it's just another alternative to Zod. And the person who posted this, Chris Nicholas on Blue Sky, they said it's easier to read because it looks like TypeScript. It's also quicker to debug because it has human-readable error messages, and it's lighter to ship. It has tree shaking and smaller bundles. So that's what their thoughts were on that. So I saw that and I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and if you want to check out like some example code here above and beyond Blue Sky, go to decoders.cc.
Sounds good. All right, should we move on to some community highlights?
Yes.
Well, ViteLand, they're doing their monthly blog post. So what's new in ViteLand for February 2026? The recap is that the aux format beta has a 100% prettier conformance. That's pretty cool.
That is very cool.
That means it's like a drop-in replacement.
That means we should probably look at this.
Probably, yeah.
Because I don't like waiting for prettier.
Yeah, so it's still in beta, so it's not like a 1.0 quite yet, but I'm sure we could still take a look at it. They added new dev tools to Vite 8. And then the vtest 4.1 beta adds around each and around all test hooks. Which that's kind of interesting. Should read more about what that does. Roll down becomes almost 10% faster, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And Oxlint now supports 59 out of 61 TS-ESLint rules. Ooh,
okay.
They're almost caught up. That's cool. And then Nest.js migrates to vtest is one of their other community highlights. So anyway.
Very slick.
Yeah, you can go take a look at the blog post if you're like, what's new?
Awesome. Dino just posted a video about how to make safe cloud code execution environments with their Deno snapshots API. So this is, you can kind of think of this like doing a Docker, but with TypeScript. So you can set up an environment. So like maybe you have some heavy stuff. This might be your Docker build step. And so you might do like, hey, you want to run Python in the cloud. I'm going to do a setup Python TS, and it's going to do all the things using the Deno Sandbox API in TypeScript. And then I have the thing that's going to use Python, and I might have use python.ts, and it'll go and boot up a fresh sandbox from that snapshot that you created in TypeScript instantly, and everything is pre-installed, frozen, reusable, and you just get going right away in Deno. So I thought that was pretty cool for setting up cloud environments that are like, maybe you're not so sold on Docker anymore, and maybe you need something like a little more flexible.
Yeah. That is pretty cool. I could see this being useful for things like batch jobs or like async jobs that need to use some special dependencies that you can just sort of pre-bake them and then
Yes.
start them up in microseconds, right, to like go do some work. So that's pretty cool.
Awesome. Next one I have is Christian from the YouTube channel Type Rocks goes through an alternate way of making type guards in Map typesafe. So remember, Kamran, you had a solution to this that you posted to JSR where you can do like Map.has and have the type be inferred inside of an if block, like be the type narrowed inside of an if block. Well, Christian takes a different approach than you did by using branded types to do it. And it's really cool because it uses TypeScript's built-in declaration merging to effectively patch the built-in types to make it type-safe map.
Ooh, that's really neat.
Yeah, watch it. It's super cool. I would have never done it this way, but it's not because it's bad, because I wouldn't have thought to use branded types.
Wouldn't have thought about it. Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's really cool. Yep. I'll have to watch that. Did he create a package for that, or like a declaration file or something like that you can just insert into your project?
Yep. That's a good question. He does have it. It's extremely simple. So like you could reproduce it from the video very quickly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like there's in his show notes there isn't a link to it, but it's very simple to do.
That's really neat.
Another cool video that I ran across was from Better Stack. They do really good stuff. And this video is about React Doctor. And the title of the video is I thought I was a senior React dev until I ran React Doctor. And this is pretty cool. And I think this might be near and dear to your heart because it's like a tool to sniff out common anti-patterns in React, performance bottlenecks. You can just put this tool, you can like run it against your code, and you can maybe use it with an agent if you want.
Mm-hmm.
But this is kind of a neat little thing you can run on your code to see like, oh, oops.
Yeah, I should run it on my code base because I still have a bunch of legacy React stuff that I'm using. Like I'm still using class components. Don't tell anybody, but I'm still using class components in a lot of stuff. That's pretty cool though.
Next up, I have a post from Yov Codes, the author of Electrobun, and it says, top secret, do not share externally. On Blue Sky. And it's a demo of them using Electrobun, the kitchen sink, without the web view to produce a native window and draw with direct access to like the WebGPU layer. And this excites me because this is like make fast video games this way. We don't have a browser.
Nice.
We can skip the browser web view and just use WebGPU. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, is the intent of this like that you be able to render your app using this method, or is this for a specific use case?
You know, he doesn't go into it, but this definitely feels like 3D game.
Okay.
Like, you know, graphics intensive operations.
Yeah.
This does feel like the play you would make. So
That's
you
cool.
don't have any DOM, you don't have any CSS.
Yeah.
That's might be a negative because those two things are very good at making UIs.
Yeah, that's true.
So, you know, there's that aspect, but this is a really interesting way to do like graphics intensive applications potentially.
Yeah. I think especially if you want to make like a 3D game and you're going to be doing custom UI anyway, like would be the way to go.
Yeah, no, it's super cool stuff.
Neat.
I'm excited about Electrobun, like unreasonably excited about Electrobun.
Yeah, I think they were recently featured on Syntax also. So there's a lot of people that are excited about Electrobun. And we've said this before, there's an appetite for people people are kind of tired of the memory inefficiency of Electron and how slow it can be. And Electrobun solves some of that. So that's pretty cool. Okay, last thing, Kent C. Dodds, who you probably know as someone who teaches a lot of JavaScript and React, and now a lot of AI stuff and TypeScript, has a new TypeScript course, or actually TypeScript workshop. It's called Practical TypeScript, and it's Foundations in Fluency. So this is a foundational course, and I think what's kind of cool about it is that if you go to the landing page, one of the first questions is like, why should I learn this when AI can write my code now? And I just want to answer it in his words, because the first question is, does that mean you don't need to learn TypeScript? And his answer is, actually, it means the opposite. AI tools are genuinely impressive. They'll scaffold entire components, generate type definitions, and handle boilerplate you'd rather not write yourself. If you're a complete beginner, AI can get you surprisingly far fast. But here's what AI can't do. Think for you when something goes wrong. When the types don't line up and the error message makes no sense, you're on your own. When the AI generates a clever generic that kind of works but isn't quite right, you need to know enough to recognize it. When you're reviewing code in a pull request, whether written by a human or a model, you need to understand what you're approving. AI lowers the barrier to entry, but it does not raise your ceiling. The developers who get the most out of AI tools are the ones who already understand their language well enough to direct, evaluate, and correct what the model produces. They're not replaced, they're amplified. The fundamentals have never mattered more. So I'd agree with that sentiment.
I'm going to tattoo AI lowers the barrier to entry but doesn't raise your ceiling on my forehead.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Couple cool links. I'm not normally a CSS person. I know enough to use Flexbox for everything. But Firefox, for web developers, their Blue Sky just landed CSS shape, where you can do like really cool stuff with things like it's similar to Path, but allows you like the full expressiveness of CSS. And Jake Archibald has a great video about this, explaining all of the use cases for shape. For example, they have like a good like cardioid heart drawing, which looks pretty cool. So if you've ever done like wild stuff to make CSS shapes, like maybe this is going to just make your life easier.
You mean like triangles?
Yeah, like triangles.
What you have to do with borders?
With borders.
Yep. So I was going to say, yep, exactly.
I have a border on one side, and then all of the others do not.
That's right.
I want a triangle.
That's funny.
There is, speaking of AI, Hank Green has a really, really cogent medium take on AI that I think is worth watching. And I think it's very nuanced conversation. And I found it very, very good. Like, I think, there's a lot of reasons to be extremely skeptical and pessimistic. And there are a lot of reasons to be excited. And I think it walks the middle road pretty well, I think. So I think that's a really great video to watch. And they bring on an expert in machine learning and AI, which I thought was a great conversation.
Like classical AI.
Yep.
Not like generative AI.
Yeah. And they talk about like all of the kinds of AI that we have accessible to us and how like a lot of solutions actually just involve like a lot of different techniques.
Yes.
Not just like using an LLM as the hammer to solve all problems is a mistake. Like it's not suited well to a lot of problems, in fact, because it's a next token predictor. It's not actually thinking strategically. Like a chess bot is programmed specifically with a strategy to beat you in chess. That kind of thing. Another good one is object-oriented Pokemon. And this is an hour-long video about how you might model Pokemon in like orthodox object-oriented programming. And I found it very interesting. I don't think I'd program Pokemon this way, but I enjoyed the video.
That's cool. Rebuilding Pokemon. Yep. And I was reading more about Pokemon this weekend and about the creator and stuff like that. It was pretty cool because I think it's been around now for 30 years. So it was sort of celebrating the 30-year anniversary.
I was talking to a few of you offline, but I think Pokemon and Minecraft might be some of the first multi-generational games.
Yeah.
Where people are playing the same game multiple generations.
Yeah. I mean, my kids are playing Minecraft and I played Minecraft. They have played a little bit of Pokemon. I think they're going to get more into it eventually. But right now they're really into Minecraft.
Multi-generational video game, I should say. Because I think there are board games that are timeless like chess. That probably would apply to.
Cool. You actually sent this cool link to me because it was related to what we were talking about. It is titled, MCP is Dead, Long Live the CLI. Spicy. So here's the funny part. I agree with most of this post. Now, what I don't necessarily agree with is that MCP has no use cases. What I would agree with is that if your agent can use a CLI, have it use the CLI. Like, MCP is a tool that is really good at abstracting a context. Like it is designed for delivering just enough context at the right time to get the agent to do something that you want it to do. And usually that is because there is no other good alternative. Okay, so it's not a first resort type of thing. It's a last resort type of thing. So the thing is that this blog post is written from the perspective of a developer and that MCP is used by developers. And so in that context, I totally agree that an agent is better at calling CLI tools and in fact is even better just writing code and calling it, right? So I totally agree with that. What I don't agree with is that MCP is dead because, like I was sort of alluding to before, when you have the ability to turn your website into a set of tools that an agent can use, that's super powerful. You can't do that with a CLI. And if you did try to do that with a CLI, a normal average human being web browser user can't do anything with that because they're not developers, right? So I think that the blog post is written for a very narrow point of view, which is MCP is only used by developers. But even in my course, we don't build something that's used by developers. We actually build something that's used by business users, by like working professionals, because these are the people who have been tasked with using AI, like AI tools, right? They're getting this top-down sort of like, you have to use an AI tool. And then they have to figure out, okay, well, what am I supposed to use these AI tools for? But in order to integrate with those tools, MCP is one of the best technologies to do that. And so if I was working inside of an enterprise and I wanted to create some useful things for the people working there, I would use MCP because it would integrate with all the tools that they're using. Plus, it can integrate with custom tools like a web app or a desktop app or a CLI, for example. So I'm just coming at it from a different perspective, but I agree with the premise that if your agent is good at using a CLI, and then just write your CLIs like as a developer and have it plug into that. You don't need an MCP server for that.
Yeah, I think this is maybe like one thing. If you are in a position where you're like, oh, we need agents to use this thing, I think a CLI is a great starting point.
Yes,
like it's a great jumping off point to like one. Like they make a good point in this post. It's just good for humans too.
Yes,
like if you're building a thing for developers, please have a CLI. You know, I don't want to have to build my bad version of a CLI to call your API.
That's right.
And then you can always like go and add an MCP.
Yep. So I mean, we've been talking about this for Excalibur of like how can we make it easier for people to like look up docs or get help as they're editing things on their game, and like having a CLI is one of the first steps of doing that because we can improve the developer experience in a lot of ways just by having a CLI.
And that's all deterministic, right?
Yep.
So like
exactly.
It's just a good tool.
Yep. Exactly. Cool. The other thing is, I was wondering, can I sell Girl Scout cookies on this podcast?
Go for it.
Is that allowed?
I don't care.
Yeah, it's our podcast, right? So my daughter is selling Girl Scout cookies, and so it's Girl Scout cookie season. So I will include a link in the show notes so that you can just click it and you can order Girl Scout cookies. Now, here's the thing. Don't order them for her to deliver them to you, because if you don't live by us, that's going to be a problem. So just do the online ordering and Girl Scouts will ship the cookies to you. And then all the proceeds go to help them do camping and other activities this upcoming year. Like my wife was lamenting that activities for a big group of girls gets expensive really fast. So things that are like $40 per girl like add up really quickly. So all the proceeds go to helping the troop like do activities and stuff like that. So it's not like it goes into someone's pocket or something. And the cookies are excellent. Like I know that you ordered the lemonades one. Did you get them yet?
They are on their way.
Okay, cool. The lemonades are fantastic. Like it's probably one of our new favorites. And then the Explore Mores are also fantastic. They're like Rocky Road flavored. They're really good.
I have never had those. I ordered one of everything.
Yep.
Or actually I ordered two of everything. So I have a lot of cookies that are going to land on my doorstep here any minute.
Yep. I think that we've finished the cookies that we ordered, so I might have to order some more just for us.
Let me track the package. I got to see where this thing is. It's en route. It's in Michigan right now. So I'll probably get it in the next day or two.
Nice. So her personal goal is to try to sell 500 packages, and she's already almost at 250. She's almost like half of the way there. And she's been doing a great job. Like she has sold boxes to her friends at school and her teachers, and at my wife's school, she's went and sold stuff. So
you're my cookie dealer.
She's doing a good job. Yep.
I want cookies.
Exactly.
I'm actually kind of sad I didn't order more cookies.
Well, it's always open, at least for this season. So you can order more if you want to. Yeah. So it's probably a good time for the Minnesota long goodbye.
That's right.
What thoughts are crossing your brain right now?
TypeScript 1. I think it's abundantly true. And I think if you're still reluctant, you're just going to have to get used to it.
Yeah, you're going to be pulled in. It's you know what they call that? It's the Red Queen effect. It's basically, and I forget where it comes from exactly. You can Google it. But the idea is that if all of your competitors, or basically everyone in your ecosystem, is doing a thing, it's going to force you to also do that thing to compete. Otherwise, you're going to be pushed out.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also see that with what's happening with AI too, where it's like, well, my competitors are doing AI. I guess that means I have to do AI. So now I'm going to do AI, because if I don't, then I can't compete. So that's the Red Queen effect. So in terms of TypeScript, I'm in a job where basically they expect us to do TypeScript. And even though I don't want to, I must do it. Otherwise, I won't have a job here. Right? So it can happen at a small level like that, and it can happen at a big macro level like that.
And I'd say the same is true of the Node API.
Yes.
That's kind of the de facto server-side
exactly
API.
Yep. And so I think that brings up good questions about, like, with Bun having 22% of usage, which is pretty high, I would say, but Deno only has like 6% or less than that. So it's like, what are you going to do? Like, if you're Deno, like, you're looking at this and you're like, there's absolutely no way that we're going to reach 90%. Like, that should not be a goal.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to differentiate? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to that.
Yeah, I'll be really interested to see what Deno's strategy unfolds to be in like the next year or two.
I think,
because like this is, I probably wouldn't have called this. Like I would have done the opposite. I would have said, oh, Deno will be in Bun's third place. Like,
yeah, I think the hard part too is, like, even with Bun, let's say, their original goal is to, take over Node. But I still think that that's not really a good goal, because it's always like you're always going to be running behind the market leader, like if you're trying to dethrone them. And unless you have the same amount of resources and like capabilities, you're just never going to catch up. Right? So it's not like a great strategy. Like, it is a strategy, but it's not a great one. So I think they probably just want to focus elsewhere. And where I feel like Bun has momentum is in the like desktop arena and like CLI arena and like native apps arena. That I think is harder for Node to catch up to, or like it's hard for Node to compete on when Bun's runtime is so much faster. So Bun wants to take advantage of platforms where you can run it natively. The web is not one of those. Right? So I don't know if it should compete really with a lot of the web stuff, but I think where it could compete really well is like stuff with Electrobun, right? Of like building better, more efficient desktop apps. Because if Bun could power desktop apps, they could steal, most of the stuff from Electron, right? Like people would switch over, especially if it's got such a good node compatibility layer where it's, one-to-one, then it reduces the risk of migrating over if you're an Electron app. So if they could get people like Discord, they could get people like Slack, even like VS Code, to switch over to like Electrobun, suddenly that could really drive a lot of momentum towards them. So anyway, that's my strategy brain thinking, and I have zero context into what's happening in like Bun, so I have no idea. Like, they should decide whatever is good for them, but from the outside, just looking at it, that's kind of what my thoughts were.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but that definitely feels like the direction they are heading, considering like the Anthropic acquisition and them doing the CLI for Cloud Code.
Yeah. I think the hard part is that they need to start saying no to more things. Like the bundling and like HTML front end, stuff like that. I would almost be like, let's axe that and let's focus elsewhere. Because like I said, I don't know that they really need to compete with like Vite and stuff like that. So I don't know. Like, maybe that's useful for bundling the actual apps, but maybe it's not. I don't know. So if they have to have it, then fine. But like, if not, just use an existing bundler. Just build on top of that ecosystem. And then like put your efforts towards other stuff like the desktop stuff or native apps. So another platform that they could target would be like mobile. right? So they could try to dethrone React Native or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It'll be really interesting to see where they go with that one because of a lot of like mobile platforms don't allow JITs, for example.
Yep. So anyway, it's kind of interesting. We'll see how that shakes out. Cool. Anything else?
Oh, I think that's all I got.
We made the survey.
We made the survey.
Yeah. We'll see if that continues.
Yes. Next time.
Sweet. Sounds good. All right. We'll see you later.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone. This is Kamran. I just wanted to thank you for listening to the show, and we hope you enjoyed the episode. If you want to see the show notes, you can check your podcast player or go to typescript.fm, where you'll see a list of all the episodes. If you enjoyed the show, tell your friends, and please rate it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, because that's how the show grows and gets discovered by more people. If you want to suggest news or a project that should be covered, or just want to say hi, email us at feedback@typescript.fm. If you want to follow us on social, we're both active on Blue Sky. I'm at comronicus.com and Eric is at ericonerheim.com. You can also follow the show directly at typescript.fm.